Hello and welcome to York Observatory's weekly TeleTube podcast, the online astronomy and astrophysics program written and presented by the students, faculty, alumni, and friends of York University. We are broadcasting live from AICO Observatory, located at York University in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. York TeleTube broadcasts every Wednesday night at 7:30 p.m. local Toronto time on York Observatory's YouTube channel. For any questions or comment you have about our past shows, or if you have any suggestions for our future topics, please send us an email at observe@yorku.ca. You can always connect with us on Twitter or Instagram with the handle at York Observatory and on Facebook at Alumni Council Ops. Good evening, everyone. I'm Nakul, and I'll be one of your hosts this evening, along with Dorsa, Camila, and Arfa. We are here from the Alumni Council Observatory at York University. Tonight, we have got a great presentation about the Artemis launch. Before starting, the observatory at York campus is in Toronto, and we would like to welcome you all to the show and to acknowledge the traditional land that our telescope is on. The observatory acknowledges its presence on the traditional territory of many indigenous nations. The area known as Chicancho has been taken care by the Anishinaabe Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Huron Wendat, and the Metis. It is now home to many indigenous people. We acknowledge the current treaty holders, the Mississaugas of the Great First Nation. Our stargazing and astronomical effort join the long history and current practices of astronomy for this land. The observatory looks forward to continuing to learn and revitalize our knowledge in this area. What's up in the sky this week? Welcome, everyone. Before we get started with our main show, we want to give you a little update on what you can see this coming week. Moon is currently in a waxing crescent phase with an illumination of 12.5%. Jupiter and Saturn will be up tonight as well. Jupiter will rise at around 8:57 p.m. ET and will set at around 9:11 a.m. ET in the morning. It's a long enough window to observe it. You can use certain binocular and small telescope to observe Jupiter and its four moons. Jupiter appears as a tiny white disk to binoculars. Saturn has the rise time of 7:12 p.m. ET and will set at 5:10 a.m. ET. Saturn is also a great planet to view with the binocular or a small telescope. However, a telescope is ideal to catch Saturn's rings. Saturn is quite a big, bright planet since it's the fifth brightest object in the night sky. It appears pale yellow in color, which is a helpful feature in locating it in the night sky. Some of the constellations visible tonight after sunset near the eastern horizon include Cepheus, Cygnus, and Aquila. Some of the stars that are visible tonight can be easily spotted include Capella, Vega, and Altair. Capella is the brightest star in the northern constellation of Auriga. Vega is the brightest star in the northern constellation of Lyra. Altair is the brightest star in the constellation of Aquila and the 12th brightest star in the night sky. After sunset in late August, for example, around this time, Vega, Deneb, and Altair are the first star to appear overhead in the darkening sky. These three bright white stars from the summer triangle asterism. Asterisms are a group of stars smaller than constellations. Summer triangle asterisms is an annual feature of the summer sky that remains visible until the end of December. Vega has a magnitude of 0.03 and is the brightest star in the summer sky, mainly due to its relative proximity. Altair, which has a magnitude of 0.75, occupies lower corner of the triangle. On the left of Vega is Deneb, which shines somewhat less bright at the magnitude of 1.25. It has a great intrinsic luminosity, which makes it bright even though it is 26,000 light years away. The Milky Way passes between Vega and Altair and throughout Deneb. Having said it all, I hope this will help you all with your observing tonight and this week. I will now pass it over to Camila to start us off with the topic of the Artemis launch. Take it away, Camila.
Thank you, Nakul. Hello, everyone. I'm Camila, and I'm here to talk a little bit about Artemis 1, the first scheduled on-crew test mission in NASA's Artemis program, which is intended to eventually land humans on the moon again. The mission acts as a preparation for Artemis 2 and Artemis 3, which will send people back to lunar orbit and the lunar surface, respectively. Something exciting about this mission is that Artemis 1 is the first mission for NASA's Moon-focused Space Launch System rocket. The Space Launch System is an American super heavy lift expendable launch vehicle which NASA has been working on since 2011. And so everyone is eagerly awaiting the outcome of NASA's 11 years of effort. Next slide, please. The entire flight of Artemis 1 will test NASA capabilities to orbit the moon and return to Earth safely. Artemis 1's mission will last approximately 42 days, 3 hours, and 20 minutes, and it will travel for about 1.3 million miles. After 2 minutes of being launched, the boosters will separate whilst the core stage will continue to burn before rupturing and falling into the Pacific. An upper stage will launch the Orion crew capsule 2 hours after liftoff and send it hurtling toward the moon. The spacecraft will orbit the moon using its gravitational pull for a few weeks before being sent back toward Earth and splashing down in the Pacific Ocean. The mission's toughest challenge will come during the re-entry, when the Orion crew capsule races through the atmosphere of the Earth at 25,000 miles per hour while attempting to resist temperatures of 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Let's talk a little bit about the backstory of the Artemis program. The last crewed mission sent by NASA was Apollo 17 in 1972. After that, political support for putting people into deep space declined, and financing for such missions ceased. NASA subsequently focused on space-related projects, particularly on the International Space Station and the Space Shuttle. After the Columbia Space Shuttle accident in 2003, NASA wanted to return people to the moon by the year 2020. However, it was found in 2009 that NASA couldn't schedule any lunar landings until the 2030s. Instead, NASA began to concentrate on missions to Mars in 2010. The 322-foot-tall Space Launch System rocket was therefore put into production by the agency. Technical difficulties, contractor issues, and a cost overrun of more than $6 billion have prevented the Space Launch System from taking off as planned. In the late 2017, NASA decided to focus on the moon once again since Mars mission was struggling. The Space Policy Directive 1 authorized the Lunar Focus campaign that year. The campaign, later known as Artemis, incorporates both existing U.S. spacecraft programs, such as the Orion Space Capsule, the Lunar Getaway Space Station, and the Commercial Lunar Payload Services, as well as brand new initiatives such as the Human Landing System, which will transfer astronauts from a lunar orbit to the surface of the moon and back. The new program's official name was later incorporated in 2019, when NASA administrator announced that it will be named Artemis, after the goddess of the moon in Greek mythology, who is the twin sister of Apollo. Therefore, the Artemis program incorporates several major components of previously canceled NASA programs and missions. Due to technical difficulties with the Space Launch System and the Orion spacecraft, Artemis 1's launch was postponed at least 16 times from its initial schedule of December 2016. The latest was on August 29th. Artemis 1 suffered an engine setback just hours before liftoff, forcing Monday morning's launch to be scrubbed. At 8:34 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, the launch director called off Monday's Artemis 1 launch attempt. The 2-hour launch window ran out as launch controllers tried unsuccessfully to complete a bleed test to bring the RS-25 engines at the bottom of the core stage to the right temperature range for liftoff. The mission depends heavily on this engine. It was modified to propel the Space Launch System after 30 years of powering the Space Shuttle. The engine must function correctly for this task to be completed successfully. Fortunately, the next launch window will open on September the 2nd. And if that window closes without a launch, our next opportunity will be on September the 5th. I am now giving it away to my colleague to talk a bit about the goals of the Artemis program and more. Take it away, Dorsa.
Hello again, everyone. Dorsa here, and I'm going to go over the goals and visions of the Artemis program and see why it is such an important launch for humanity. As you all may have known, and as previously mentioned before, the last time the humans went to the moon was on December 11th, 1972, Apollo 17, the final Apollo program by NASA and the most recent mission where humans traveled to the moon and beyond low Earth orbit. Since then, we were trying to prepare for another mission to send humans back to the moon with advanced technology and improved knowledge and skills. Artemis's goal is to send us back to the moon once again after 50 years. NASA will land the first woman and the first person of color on the moon. They're planning to use innovative technology to explore the beautiful lunar surface even more than they did before back in 1972. Learning about the moon and its surface allows us to further learn about ourselves and our place in the celestial neighborhood. It can also guide us into understanding the evolution of Earth from the time that it was formed about 4.5 billion years ago, when gravity pulled swirling gas and dust for this formation. The moon is the only other rocky ground that we ever had the chance to step on, and through learning about it, its surface, and much more, by establishing a long-term presence once we land there, we can piece together not only moon's formation, but also Earth's origin story. In other words, NASA's Artemis program is the dawn of a new space age, making it a historical event in the human history. They want to build an Artemis base camp on the surface and the gateway in lunar orbit, essentially, something that was never done before. Landing humans at the unexplored lunar South Pole and eventually traveling to Mars is the ultimate goal for NASA, who is also collaborating with the international space community and agencies like the Canadian Space Agency, alongside commercial space partners like SpaceX. The astronauts will go on a long-duration mission that explore places that we didn't have the chance to explore before. Let's talk a bit about Artemis 1. Artemis 1 is the first stage of NASA's lunar exploration program with the goal of a long stay on the surface as mentioned previously. The launch on August 29th was for this rocket to propel the unmanned Orion spacecraft to the moon and test the engines for a series of increasingly complex missions to build a long-term human presence at the moon, as NASA mentioned. It is a vital step for this program to make sure that Orion's system in the spaceflight environment goes as well, and the whole program ensures a safety reentry, descent, splashdown, and final recovery prior to the first flight with Artemis 1 crew, which is the ultimate first goal for NASA and the priority. Artemis 1 is basically an uncrewed flight test of the Space Launch System and the Orion spacecraft around the moon, and from there Artemis 2 will become the first crewed flight test of SLS, and then Artemis 3 and beyond, which is the underway for regular cadence of Artemis missions with the crew reporting to NASA. Orion's flight in Artemis 1 is supposed to last around 6 weeks from the liftoff in Florida to its splashdown in the Pacific. It will take about a week for Artemis to reach the moon, and near the landing time, the capsule will use moon's gravity to enter the orbit. A fun fact that you might find interesting is that Orion will be put at 450,000 kilometers from Earth, which is farther than the last Apollo mission at 400,727 kilometers. The whole point of all the testing and the safety measurements is for the crew to have a safe and easy journey to and back from their exploration duration with Artemis, and to find scientific discoveries and become an inspiration for the new generation of explorers when it comes to deep space exploration. As you may have heard though, on August 29th, the launch for Artemis 1 had to be postponed to Friday, September 2nd. This is because the engineers encountered a few issues with the engines and had to take into account a thunderstorm that was on the way on Monday. NASA detected a fuel leak and then an engine problem during the final liftoff, so the launch had to get delayed to find the issue and hopefully for it to get fixed and get launched in the near future. This is an example of the safety measures that they are taking and shows the huge importance of spacecraft testing and safety measurements goals that must be taken into account for space programs. Well, folks, that was my part. I hope you have enjoyed learning a bit more about NASA's goals for Artemis. I'm going to give it away to Arfa. Take it away, Arfa.
Thank you, Dorsa. Now, Artemis. Artemis construction has been a very long journey to the launch pad by the Space Launch System, short SLS. No wonder about it since it was the most powerful rocket ever built. The SLS is a super heavy lift vehicle and NASA's first exploration class rocket for human space travel since the Saturn V, which was the most powerful rocket to serve the NASA before the SLS. The SLS, however, takes the concept of evolution to a whole new level. The initial planning for the replacement of the Saturn V was a journey which began with a series of in-house and external studies, including 1986 Space Transportation Architecture Study and the 2005 Exploration Systems Architecture Study. This made NASA to refocus on the idea of returning humans to deep space. Thousands of spacecraft to bring in an efficient and realistic model because this spacecraft has a super heavy lifting capability in order for this mission to be success. In 2010, the first plan and the first step was completed, where the attributes of this rocket, which would need, were the weight capacity because it is carrying 143 tons of payload into a low Earth orbit and to be fully operational by the end of the year of 2016. These were the goals that were clarified when the goals of the SLS were laid out. Now, the mission had numerous delays and the launch has been pushed to later in September, though. Now, talking about the expenses and costing of this project. In 2011, it was estimated that a conservative development cost of 18 billion USD through 2017, with the SLS itself slated to cost 10 billion, the Orion craft were 6. And the launch upgrades to Kennedy Space Center estimated at 2 billion, and this cost was presented by NASA in the presentation. However, NASA did reduce the mission complexity for the SLS design by the advantage of resources established for the space shuttle, including the workforce, manufacturing process, launch infrastructure, and even the liquid oxygen, liquid hydrogen propellants that will power the SLS. There is also the heritage boosters and the shuttle engines that are used in the SLS with significant upgrades. It took 1,100 companies from all across the USA for the development of the SLS, taking advantage of a wellspring of space development experience. I would like to add a quote from the professional here. The SLS is built with the benefit of everything NASA and our industry partners have learned about the building rocksteady and the spacecraft to survive extreme environments, Cobb said. It uses modern manufacturing techniques and updated elements such as the RS-25 engines and the solid rocket boosters that demonstrated extreme reliability on numerous shuttle missiles. Cobb adds that the SLS combines these new techniques with the new advanced flight computers and electrical systems. The Boeing company took the lead in the construction of the first version of the SLS, or Block 1, as it is official title, with the building of the core stage hardware, a stretch shuttle external fuel tank powered by the 4 space shuttles, RS-25, the main engines, and in November 2015 at the McCoud Assembly Facility in New Orleans, Louisiana. Getting into more technical details here and moving to the next years, the core stage holds 730,000 gallons, or you can say 3.3 million liters of super cooled liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen for its 4 RS-25 engines, which should be able to provide 8.8 million pounds, or let's say 3.9 million kilograms of maximum thrust at liftoff, which is 15% more thrust than Saturn V. These were attached to the core stage in 2019 after being tested by NASA between 2015 and 2017. In early 2020, the SLS core stage was moved to Stennis Space Center for extensive testing, which included firing tests which occur in January and March 2021, with all 4 engines igniting and throttling down in a simulation of in-flight conditions during the later test. The core stage was moved again in April 2021, this time to Kennedy Space Center, where it was coupled with upper stage that it will be using during Artemis 1. At the Kennedy Space Station, interim cryogenic propulsion stage, shortened for ICPS, occurred, which included a pair of 5-segment space shuttle solid rocket boosters that will push Orion away from Earth's orbit. The final push will occur when the SLS is traveling at 17,500 miles per hour, or you can say 28,163 kilometers per hour, while 161 kilometers above the planet. The stacking assembly finished in June 2021, with the Orion capsule being installed as one of the finalizing steps. At this moment, the SLS, now standing at 322 feet or 98 meters taller than the Statue of Liberty, but still smaller than the Saturn V and weighing 5.75 million pounds or 2.6 million kgs, the launch pad dedicated for SLS is LC-39B on March 17, 2022. Though the core stage of the SLS with its 4 RS-25 engines will carry through the Artemis program, the rocket will evolve to increasingly more powerful configurations needed to carry the crew of Orion craft 1,000 times further than the International Space Center, and to speeds of 24,500 miles per hour, which would be needed to reach the moon. The twin 5-segment solid rocket boosters and the 4 RS-25 liquid propellant engines of Block 1 will be able to lift 59,500 pounds or 27,000 kgs to orbit beyond the moon. The upper stages of ICPS then sends Orion off to the moon. Now on to Nakul.
Thank you, Arfa. Hello again, all. I would like to go over the Artemis mission launch plan. Artemis 1 will be launched on the Block 1 variant of the Space Launch System, which consists of a core stage and 2 5-segment solid rocket boosters. The core and the booster could able to produce 39,000 kilonewton of thrust at liftoff. The core stage uses 4 RS-25, which is also known as Space Shuttle main engine. The upper stage is known as the interim cryogenic propulsion stage, and it's powered by a single RL 10B2 engine. The interim cryogenic propulsion stage performs a translunar injection burn once in orbit, which places the Orion spacecraft and the 10 CubeSat on a trajectory to the moon. Then Orion separates from the ICPS and goes to lunar space. The spacecraft have to spend 3 weeks, approximately 6 days, in distance retrograde orbit around the moon and 2 weeks in the space before it splashes on the Pacific Ocean. The launch of the Artemis spacecraft has been postponed, but the mission plan is expected to be in this way. The SLS and the Orion will be lifted off from the Kennedy Space Center. After the takeoff, the solid rocket booster will be separated and the launch abort system is no longer needed. And then core stage main engine will be separated and the Orion enters the Earth orbit and perform a pedigree raise maneuver. Translunar injection burns, which last for approximately 20 minutes. And then interim cryogenic propulsion stage gets separated and the interim cryogenic propulsion stage will be committed or into translunar injection. Then outerbound trajectory connection burns to adjust trajectory for lunar flyby to distance retrograde orbit. Outbound powered flyby target distant retrograde orbit intersection 62 miles from the moon and enters the distant retrograde orbit for next 6 to 23 days. Distant retrograde orbit burns and the solar panel adjustment will be orbiting 30,000 miles from the surface of the moon. And then it leaves from the distant retrograde orbit and returns to Earth. Return power flyby burns up and the course of the Earth's gate initiated. Return trajectory correction burns as necessary to reach Earth's atmosphere by 3 to 11 days. Final return trajectory correction burns up and it enters Earth's orbit. At last, it splashes down in the Pacific Ocean within the view of US Navy recovery ship. And we have a short video on how the Artemis 1 gonna launch and how it's gonna work. So yeah.
DLS is go for approach sequence 4.
Copy that. And Jeremy, SOCC, start your display recorder, please.
DLS is go for LHC position.
First is complete. Copy all.
Also check up the flaring chains armed. Down suppression water system armed.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. That was an amazing video, and the Artemis one is expected to take off hopefully by the end of this week, and the expected mission duration is said to be between 25 to 60 days. If the mission goes well, it would be a first successful step towards the lunar exploration program. And next, we might expect a crewed mission to the moon after a long time, which is Artemis 2, and it's expected to take off by 2024. And now I'm giving over to Dorsa.
Well, everyone, you have been listening to the LNI Cosmos Observatory's weekly TeleTube broadcast, the Astronomy and Astrophysics program, written and presented by the students, faculty, alumni, and friends of York University. The hosts this evening have been Nakul, Arfa, Camila, and myself, Dorsa. Make sure to leave any comments or questions in the comment section of the video and talk to us in a chat right now. We will be around for the next 20 minutes to answer your questions. All of our programs are free, but if you would like to make a donation, see our website at observatory.info.yorkview.ca. You can always connect with us on Twitter with the handle @YorkObservatory and check out our website for show notes, content, updates, and contact info at observatory.info.yorkview.ca. Thanks for tuning in, clear skies, and have a good night.